Join the Thinking in English Conversation Club right now and get a 7-day free trial. That's right, 1 week free to see if you enjoy our conversation club. The only way to improve your English speaking ability is by speaking, and speaking as often as possible. And the best way to do this is with my conversation clubs. Join small groups of other Thinking in English listeners, along with me and professional English tutors, to discuss fascinating topics, learn vocabulary, and really improve your English. All of our clubs are conducted online and are an amazing space to practice, test yourself, and meet interesting people. We run clubs 6 times a week, and the more of you who join, the more sessions we will run in the future. You can join the Conversation Club right now for just $10 a month. And if you sign up today, you can get a 7-day free trial. Click the link in the description or go to www.patreon.com/thinkinginenglish to join now. Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast for intermediate to advanced level English learners. What is gene-edited food? Why is it controversial, and should we be eating it? Let's discuss this today and learn some new vocabulary at the same time. You can find the full transcript for free over on the Thinking in English blog. Check out my Instagram page and YouTube channel, both called Thinking in English. Join my conversation clubs to improve your English, and leave me a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. Here is today's vocabulary list. As always, the written list is available in the description of the podcast and also on my blog, thinkinginenglish.blog. Gene. Gene. A part of the DNA in a cell that controls the physical development, behaviour of an individual plant or animal, and is passed on from its parents. For example, the illness is believed to be caused by a defective gene. Resilient. Resilient. Able to improve quickly after being hurt or being ill. For instance, life is hard there, but the people are resilient. To breed. To breed. To keep animals or plants for the purpose of producing young animals or plants, often for chosen qualities. As in, he bred pigs and cows and sold the meat and dairy products. Organism. Organism. A single living plant, animal, virus, etc. For instance, bacteria are single-celled organisms. Mutation. Mutation. The way in which genes change and produce permanent differences. For example, it is well known that radiation can cause mutations. To exacerbate. To exacerbate. To make something that is already bad even worse. For instance, this attack will exacerbate the already tense relations between the two communities. Yield. Yield. An amount of something positive, such as food or profit, that is produced or supplied. For instance, crop yields have risen steadily. Food security will be one of the biggest challenges facing the world over the next century. As our population increases and our appetites grow, how will we feed ourselves? One potential solution is the development of gene-edited food, something the UK legalised only a few weeks ago. The new law in England allows scientists to edit crop DNA to improve certain qualities. The hope is that such practices could allow companies to create crops resistant to climate change and pests. Gene editing has a variety of potential uses. It could be used to create crops with better features, like larger apples, juicier pears, or spicier chilies. It could be used to add certain features, for example, increasing the vitamin or health benefits of certain foods. And it could be used to create more resilient crops, crops better equipped to deal with climate change, extreme weather, or pests. Today, I want to talk about gene-edited food in more detail. After explaining the background and meaning of gene-edited food, I will discuss why it is a controversial topic, food security, and end by asking, should we be eating gene-edited food? Listen, learn, and pick up some new vocabulary in this episode. The food we eat today has been bred and created by farmers for centuries. If you look at paintings from the past or read written accounts, you'll realize how different food used to be. Watermelons didn't have the large amount of juicy red flesh we love today. They were pale and full of seeds. The same is true of bananas, tomatoes, and countless other fruits and vegetables. However, farmers realized that they could produce new varieties of food and create better produce through a process called selective and cross-breeding. They could select seeds from the biggest, tastiest, least seeded fruits, mix them, and create a better product. Seedless oranges, massive cucumbers, sweet tomatoes, super spicy chilies, all of these are results of cross-breeding. This is how many of the fruits and vegetables, and even meat animals, we eat today have been developed. The problem is that it can take years to do this, and farmers cannot guarantee the results. It can take many efforts of trial and error to achieve the desired goal. Just because you select seeds from the largest apples, for example, doesn't guarantee you large apples the following year. It is still a random process. There are ways to take away the random element. Using genetic methods, scientists can locate the key genes for flavor, size, color, or other desirable elements and create new varieties quickly. There are a few different variations of genetic methods. One is genetic modification, or GM, which involves adding genes from different species, plants, and even animals into another plant's DNA to create a new variety. It allows you to breed varieties of plants that could not have been bred with traditional methods. The approach approved recently by the UK is slightly different. It is known as gene editing, or GE, and is a newer technology and a newer technique. Instead of adding genes from other plants, scientists can edit the DNA itself, turning certain genes on or off to create new varieties this way. Gene editing is a precise and targeted way of altering DNA to add, remove, or modify genes in an organism. The UK law will allow this approach as long as the result could, theoretically, have been achieved naturally. Compared to GMOs, which typically involve inserting foreign genes from a different species, gene-edited foods rely on changes that could have occurred naturally in the same or closely related species. And this can make gene editing a more precise and efficient way of altering an organism's characteristics. There are already a variety of gene-edited crops and animals that have been developed or are in development right now. For example, scientists have used gene editing to make crops more resistant to disease, pests, and environmental stresses, such as drought. Gene editing has also been used to produce animals with desirable traits, such as leaner meat or resistance to diseases. Let me give you some actual examples of gene-edited foods currently available around the world. In the UK, scientists have developed tomatoes, modified to be a source of vitamin D, increasing the nutritional value of the crop. In the US, fruit companies are developing seedless varieties of cherries. And in Japan, it is possible to buy tomatoes containing a calming chemical called GABA, and also buy sea bream, a fish, which has had its genes edited to make it more suitable for sushi. Now, It's important to acknowledge that gene-edited food is a topic of an ongoing debate and controversy due to concerns about its safety, environmental impact, and ethical implications. The EU went so far as to effectively ban the practice a few years ago. But why? Well, one concern is the potential unintended consequences of gene editing, such as unexpected changes to other parts of an organism's DNA, or the transfer of edited genes to other species. Another concern is the potential for gene-edited organisms to have negative effects on natural ecosystems if they were to escape into the wild. On the other hand, these concerns can, and are actually more likely, to happen naturally as a result of random mutations. From an ethical standpoint, some people argue that gene editing raises moral concerns about playing with the genetic makeup of organisms. There is also concern about the implications for animal welfare if gene editing is used to produce animals with specific traits. Arguments against gene-edited food from a social perspective include concerns about the concentration of power within the food industry and the potential impact on small-scale farmers and local food systems. Critics argue that gene editing could exacerbate existing inequalities and create new ones. In terms of health, some argue that not enough is known about the long-term effects of consuming gene-edited foods. There are also concerns about the potential for gene editing to introduce new allergens into food and cause unintended health consequences. Now, scientists insist that both GM, genetically modified, and GE, gene-edited foods are safe to eat. And many of you listening in Asia and in the Americas have actually been eating such food for decades with no negative side effects. Yet concerns over health has meant the EU has severely restricted the sale of such products. The truth, however, is that criticisms and arguments against gene editing, and gene editing specifically, are not particularly strong. There is no evidence gene editing is harmful. Unexpected side effects are actually more likely to occur with natural breeding, and farmers could benefit from pest and weather-resistant varieties of crops. Gene-edited food has the potential to play a significant role in addressing food security and reducing food waste. By increasing crop yields and reducing crop losses due to pests, disease, and environmental stress, gene-edited crops could help to ensure a more stable and reliable food supply. Additionally, gene-edited animals could potentially produce more food with fewer resources, reducing the environmental impact of meat production. There are concerns about the potential impact on small-scale farmers and local food systems. Some worry that gene-edited crops could further entrench industrial agriculture and lead to the displacement of traditional farming practices. Others argue that gene editing could exacerbate existing inequalities in the food system by giving larger businesses an unfair advantage over small-scale farmers. Despite these concerns, some experts argue that gene-edited food has the potential to play a key role in sustainable agriculture. By creating crops that are more resistant and resilient to environmental stress, gene editing could help reduce the use of pesticides and fertilizers, which can have negative impacts on soil health and water quality. Gene-edited crops could reduce food waste by increasing the shelf life of foods and reducing spoilage. The question of whether or not we should be eating gene-edited food is a complex one, with both proponents or supporters and opponents of this technology. Proponents argue that gene-edited food has the potential to increase crop yields and reduce food waste, while also promoting sustainable agriculture and reducing the environmental impacts of food production. They also argue that gene editing can be used to create crops and animals that are more resilient to disease, pests, and environmental stress, which could help to ensure a more stable and reliable food supply. Opponents of gene-edited food, on the other hand, have raised concerns about the potential unintended consequences of gene editing, such as unexpected changes to an organism's DNA, or the transfer of edited genes to other species. They also argue that not enough is known about the long-term effects of consuming gene-edited foods, and that there are ethical concerns about playing with the genetic makeup of organisms. Alternatives to gene-edited food include organic or regenerative agriculture practices, which focus on improving soil health and biodiversity, as well as reducing the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. However, it is important to note that these approaches may not be able to address all of the challenges facing the food system, such as increasing crop yields and reducing food waste. The question of whether or not we should be eating gene-edited food is a complex one with both potential benefits and drawbacks. While gene editing has the potential to play an important role in addressing food security and promoting sustainable agriculture, it is important to carefully evaluate the risks and benefits before widespread adoption. Additionally, it is important to consider alternatives to gene-edited food and the potential consequences of not adopting this technology. So here is today's final thought. This episode has tried to introduce the topic of gene-edited food to all of you. I discussed the definition, some controversies, food security, and whether or not we should all be eating it. Personally, I have no objection to eating genetically modified or edited crops. And if crops can be edited to help us improve our food security and increase the durability of crops in places struggling with food needs, I think we should all be in support of such practices. Of course, in a dream world, we would all be able to eat completely natural, organic, locally sourced food. But as our population increases and food becomes harder to grow, I think we need to find solutions and find those solutions quickly. But what do you think? Should we be eating gene-edited food? Or is it something that you would never do? Let me know by leaving a comment on the Thinking in English transcript, reply to the Spotify post, you can reply on Spotify, or send me a message on Instagram. I love hearing from all of you and I love it when you all reach out. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening right now. Check out my Instagram page and my YouTube channel for more content. I have a Patreon for conversation clubs, bonus episodes, and much more. You can find the link in the description and help support the podcast. And also recommend the podcast to one of your friends right now. I'll see you next time.